the best one. It's so great to be back for our 4th of 8 Destination sessions. Welcome, Mr. Wool. We always welcome parents. If anyone wants to bring parents, they're always welcome. It's great to have them every year. We have mothers, fathers come. So feel free to please ask me before. Just let me know. We'll set it up. In this week's Parsha, we started the second Sefer, what Svarim call Sefer Hasheni. The Bahag, when he lists the name of Sefer Shmos and other sources, as Rav Weinfeld points out, doesn't give it a name. Fascinating that Sefer Shmos, the Sefer of names, doesn't get a name. When we go down to exile, we lose our identity. The melting pot of cultures, others around us, we lose who we are. And so Sefer Shmos reminds us that even going down to the exile, we have a name. See, the Avos, it's easy to have names for the forefathers. It's easy to have names when there's just a few. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Shivim Nefesh, Yardu, Mitzrayim. But now the myriads of thousands and thousands of Banim Ubnei Banim, children and children, it's very easy to lose your identity. It's very easy to be lost amongst the masses. Added dimension of being Gaulah. So many Jews have lost their identity. And we come to this program to remind them, Shmos, you have a name, you have an identity, you have something unique about yourself, and a unique connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And tonight we have 2 more unbelievable classes with 2 new speakers. The first class is on misconceptions people have about Judaism. Jews themselves who are Jewish don't really understand what Judaism is all about. And it's important in your encounter in Kiruv, outreach, in your encounter interaction with Jews of all types, to be aware of some of the misconceptions they might have and not to make any assumptions when starting the relationship. And we have an unbelievable speaker tonight, Rabbi John Gaynor, who's gone through the Aish Torah system and is now works with a unique outreach project called Justify, which combines social action with Jewish values. And it's a big honor to call upon Rabbi John Gaynor to speak about misconceptions about Jews have about Judaism.
Hi guys, so just a little bit about myself just before we get started. I've pretty much been in and around Aish for about 8 years now, maybe a drop more. I came in not knowing any Hebrew. I came in with all the misconceptions we're going to speak about today. I came in not fasted once in my life for Yom Kippur, not had a Pesach Seder once. All of that basically happened in and around these buildings and because of these buildings and the people in them. And because of most of the information that you're going to be taught, either in this session or the sessions that you are going to have had already. But I'm going to speak about it a little bit in my speech, but I work for an organization called Justify. Justify takes people around the world, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Peru, Nicaragua. We run trips around the world. And we focus on different social problems. And in each society, we pick one issue. In Thailand, we pick the sex trade. In South Africa, we pick post-apartheid. In India, we pick the old caste system. And we show people, which hopefully I'll explain a bit on it later, we show people that the only reason these problems are happening is because people are buying into social norms that they just don't need to. They're buying into cultural and social norms that everyone around them is just pushing onto them. And with a little bit of thought, if they would actually think about their lives, if they'll think about what they're doing, if they'll think about what they want to achieve in their lives, they'll just say no. So that's very appropriate to every culture, every society, every people around the world. And instead of us going to these people and saying, why are you buying into these bad social norms? Why are you choosing to be secular over to be religious? Why are you choosing to be, X over Y? Why are you choosing these bad choices? Instead, we use a straw man. We go to these societies and we say, look at those people. They're making all these bad decisions. They're making, and it's just because they're buying into their societies. They're not thinking. And the subconscious message which people get is that, hey, if they're not thinking and they're buying into bad values, maybe we're doing it too. And they start to refine and think about some of their values and what they're living for and why they're doing it, and it changes lives. So that's just a little introduction about the organization I work for. So let's start a bit with misconceptions. Now, if I would ask you what people's misconceptions about Judaism are, what would you say? Anyone? Sorry? Outdated. Yeah, it's something from the past. Rabbis made up all the stuff. Yeah. Anyone else? What do you think? You look like you've got something to say. No? No? Okay. In the back? Sexist. Beautiful. Or not, but whatever. Yeah. No, anyone else? Culty. What's culty mean? Sorry, you're eating.
Like we're all one group and we just throw away anyone who wants them, but we don't allow anyone to learn.
We're very insular. Anyone else? Racist. What do you mean by that? Great. Nice. Next, yeah?
It's like a bunch of rules that restrict your freedom.
Beautiful, not fun. Restricting. Anyone else? Okay, fine. Imagine going into imagine that you got a wedding coming up. So you go to a clothing store and you get really excited and you save up and you buy a suit. And you know exactly what type of suit you want to buy, you know exactly the style, you know exactly the color, you know exactly the model, the brand, you want to know the name that's that's sewed into it, you know everything about it. And you go in and you take it off the rack and you try it on, but you try it on over your clothes. Right? It's just not going to go. It's not going to look like it does in the picture. Why not? Because that's not how a suit is meant to be worn. The same thing's true by every idea, every notion, every concept that we have in our brains, every idea that we get from our societies, every piece of information we have. It's being added to what we already have. It's being added to, so to speak, the ideas and the notions and the preconceived notions that we already have. So the first stage in order to understand anything is to make sure you're being objective. This is the first thing we have to tell. Obviously, I'm going to try and teach the class, but at the same time, add in a few notes here and there as educators ourselves that we can make it our own, and we can use this information to try and help people as much as possible. The first thing you have to do is get people to be objective. And the way to do that is to shed all of the information, all of the knowledge, all of the things that they think they know about a topic, and start from scratch. Does that make sense? So I think there are two ways to make people drop their preconceived notions. The first one is actually what we're going to do tonight, which is go misconception by misconception, speak it out, see if it makes sense, and then speak it through, and then together work it out like a sugya, and it'll end up that it's not such a misconception. Whatever they thought is not true about Judaism, or they misunderstood, or whatever, however we want to phrase it. The second way, which I think is more effective, is slightly different. The second way is to show exactly what we said before. That everything that people have in their lives, they didn't really think about. Everything in their life, all the values that they're willing to get upset about and to protest about and to all these things, they didn't really put so much intellectual effort into it. You have to, in a very nice way, you have to remind people the reason that these people went off is not because their great-great-grandparents had some sort of deep philosophical issue with Judaism. The reason they went off is because it was really hard. And since the reason that they went off, it was really hard, what's really happened over the time is they've integrated all these values from the people around them. And eventually what happened? They started living by those values. Does that make sense? It's okay. It's okay. I'm happy. You can. It's a conversation. You don't hear it?
I don't know if they felt that it was so hard. Some people have just been raised this way. Now they didn't go off.
But why did they? And their parents and their great
I
parents?
agree to your idea of they integrated all the preconceived notions. But
Sure.
I don't think that all of them went off because it was hard.
So what's another reason they went off?
Because they just started living like all the rest of society.
Okay, that's great. Beautiful. Amazing. Let's use what you said to explain the following. Jewish history in a nutshell. Right, Jewish history in a nutshell is the Jewish people, where we're up to in the Parsha, they leave Egypt, 10 plagues, Kriyas Yamsuf, the whole world knows about Hashem. Right, they leave Egypt, and where do they go? Mount Sinai, after a lot of wandering. Yeah? What's meant to happen at Mount Sinai? That the Jewish people were meant to get what, in secular language, they were meant to get the Jewish constitution. And they were meant to go to Israel and implement that constitution. Yeah? So in a perfect Jewish world, what would be happening is all the Jewish people would be here, they'll be living under Torah law, and what would be happening? That there would be masses and masses of different, unique, niche elements of Jewish halacha and Jewish ideals that would need to be played out. Let me explain. Imagine that there's a sorry. Imagine that let's pick on Mikey just because I know. Imagine that Mikey is tasked by the Sanhedrin to be in charge of all trade between the Jewish nation and the Hittite nation, or the Egyptians. So now there's an element of Jewish law that he needs to be an expert in, which is trade, which is what you can sell to Goyim, which is what you can give to them, what you can take from them, when you can do it, is it their festivals, is it not? And there's a whole bunch of things that he needs to know. Fast forward to the destruction of the Kiruv of Bayis Sheni, and what happens? Mike and his family get kicked out of the land, and they find themselves as slaves in a Roman vineyard. So now there's not much use for Hittite exchange rates, right? There's not much use for that part of Torah. There's not much use for all of the things that he was an expert in. So as a result, what happened? It all pretty much got forgotten. And what was allowed to be carried on was whatever the masters allowed them to do. Which is why we've lost pretty much all this is why we don't. This is why in the Bavli we don't have Shemitah and we don't have all these things, and why later on it took until the Chazon Ish to really, and modern poskim to really add something to that. Because for 2,000 years it was so irrelevant to Jewish life, it was so unthinkable that we would actually be able to do something about it, that those areas of Judaism got lost. And that happened time and time again. If you go to America even, when Jews were first coming to America, right, people got fired every week. Right, you know, these pink slips, right? Every week they'll work on Shabbos, they'll get fired, they'll get another job. Judaism constantly got dropped because it was hard and because the people around us didn't allow us to do those things. And all that the average guy did, obviously there were Gibborim, obviously there were big people that pushed and they did everything that they could. But very often people couldn't. Because it was really hard, because of the pressures around them. It was really hard. And as a result, they did what the non-Jewish masters, so to speak, around us allowed us to do. That was really the point that I was making before. Sorry, what's your name? Simcha. But Simcha said something interesting. It's also a clash in values. And with that, I want to explain. I saw an incredible medrash. It's become popularized by lots of achronim. I saw it by Rav Dessler. I saw it also in Sichas Musa. There's a medrash that was brought from last week's parsha from Shmais, and it says something very strange. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he ran because he killed the Mitzri, and he ran to Midian, goes to Yisro's house. And he's about to marry Yisro's daughter, and Yisro says, on one condition. Anyone know this? What's the condition?
That he doesn't circumcise Gershon.
So he goes further than that. Anyone? Oh, beautiful. That one of your kids, one gersa of the medrash is that your older son needs to be a kohen, needs to be a priest for Avodah Zarah. And Moshe Rabbeinu was like, yeah, sure. And that's the end of the medrash. To me, when I first saw that, my eyes popped out my skull. Moshe Rabbeinu, he agrees to give his older son, one of his sons, to Avodah Zarah. What on earth's going on? So one of the ideas that I heard was exactly the point that we're trying to discuss today. Which is, imagine Yisro's life. Imagine what Yisro had been through. He went through every single Avodah Zarah in the entire world. And they're all nonsense. But imagine what a Shabbos meal with Yisro would be like. Imagine the stories he would tell about his life. In Sichos Musar, he says something similar to this. He says, imagine sitting at the table with that guy. Right? Imagine you bringing up your grandchildren where every week it was like when I was bowing down to cows in India. Right? When I was like the head priest in like this weird cult. When I was doing X, Y, and Z. Right? Everyone knows that if we're exposed to that information enough, what's going to happen? Our minds are going to wander and say, yeah, that does sound cool. It was Moshe Rabbeinu's decision. Obviously, we have to be very careful how we speak, but Moshe Rabbeinu's decision to raise his grandchildren in that environment, even though this conversation never actually happened, that he didn't really agree to raise his his son up to Avodah Zarah, that the very fact that Moshe Rabbeinu decided to raise his family in those conditions meant he was basically agreeing to let his son go off. Because subconsciously, the stories, the house, the environment, the interaction between the grandfather Yisro and the grandchildren, subconsciously will chip away at the grandchildren, and eventually they're going to understand that these are valid mahalchim, these are real things, and they're going to go and check it out themselves. Let's add a tiny bit to that. That I think this is the reason, deep down, why Hollywood's so successful at selling people values. If I came to you and said, I want to have a philosophical discussion with you, objectively you're going to analyze every aspect of that philosophical argument. And you're going to get back to me and you're going to argue certain different things. But if you're watching TV, if you're watching a movie, if you're watching something and you care about the plot, you care about the characters, then the values that are being espoused, the values that are being spoken about, you don't really think about. They're just in the background, and you're just allowing them to enter into your system without any real objective thinking, without any real challenging. And as a result, these values start to be integrated into the people. And as a result, they start changing society. It's the same thing with advertising. Right? I was reading just before, Heineken paid, I think it was just under $50 million for 15 seconds that James Bond in one of the movies would take a swig of Heineken. Now, let's explain that on a most basic level. What does that mean? What's going through the average mind of the person watching it? A cool guy, James Bond, drinks beer, therefore if I drink beer, I'm cool. Now, does anyone think that sounds logical? But yet, this is exactly what all marketing is. It's taking values and integrating them into our lives and into our psyches and into our thoughts, without bypassing all logical reason, bypassing all my intellect. And these are how these values get there. So, as I said, I think the best way to judge all misconceptions is just to show people that they never really thought about them themselves. I think the best example of this, I think the funniest example is, most people are from America, right? Can you just explain to me this one line? I pledge allegiance to the flag and the republic for which it stands. What's the flag?
Representation
Of the country. But you said the flag and the republic for which it stands.
No.
So what are you pledging? What's the first thing you're pledging allegiance to? The flag. Has anyone thought about this?
No, but the flag is not necessarily just representation.
So what does it represent? The republic, right?
Democracy.
The flag represents democracy. Does it vote?
No, the flag also when the flag was first made, it was made as a remembrance to people who died. So when you say like I'm pledging allegiance to the flag, you're remembering the people
So
who
say
died.
that.
So you don't have to go because the flag represents it in itself.
But no one knows that. So how does it represent something if no one knows it?
Go
Whatever. It was just a side point. It's okay. I can have this debate with you or not. You learn next door. I don't know. For me, it was very interesting. That people have said something daily, and they've never really thought about it, what they're saying. And yet, if anyone messes with it, then they're going to be the first one to be upset.
Freshman year of high school, they give you a whole lesson on the flag.
Great. Baruch Hashem, not American. No. So anyway, so that's the first mahalach. The first mahalach is tell people about their values. That what? That start analyzing. Where did you get your values from? Where did you get your values from? And most people, after a small bit of research, will say, I'm not sure. I didn't really think about these values. I got them from my society. And as a result, you can start talking through being objective. Okay, so what are correct values? How does that work? Etc., etc. But we're going to focus from now to the end on the second bit, which is that what values have people integrated? What misconceptions about religion, and specifically Judaism, have people integrated? And as a result, are less likely to come through. And I think what we said before is a really key point. If you take anything, this is the point. That people did not go off because of philosophical differences with Judaism. They went off because back in the day it was either really hard or they had a bad value system based off of the society that they had. So this is not you. This is not you having a deep philosophical conversation with them. This is you presenting new information that they've never really thought about. So anyway, we'll start with the misconceptions. The first one I will talk about is actually something that was mentioned, which is that being frum is really hard. Being frum is really hard. It takes all the fun out of life. Anyone want to counter that? Anyone think that's true? Anyone? Raise your hand. Anyone think that's true? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Okay, very good. No, sure. But on the flip side, we do know the following. Sorry. We do know the following. That if we have a deep and a correct understanding of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, that He is the ultimate, infinite being, beyond everything, beyond all physical needs and wants, and He created the world. We're not dealing with why He did it, and we see that He created a world. It cannot be for the needs of the infinite, because He's infinite. He doesn't need or want anything. And if it's not for His benefit, then it must be for... You want to finish that sentence? You did great. Our benefit. I normally use the following story. And this is like the educational trick that I picked up from my rabbis. It goes as follows. Imagine you go on a trip to South Africa and you see all of the amazing sites. Baruch Hashem, I was to teach there for a while last year, working for Aish, and it's a really beautiful place. So you go there and you check out all the amazing places. You go to Cape Town, you go to Johannesburg, you go to Kruger. They have a safari park there the size of Israel. It's amazing. It's immense. It's incredible. So you go there and you see all the animals and you get a bit bored. And you say, I want to see real Africans. I don't want to see touristy stuff anymore. So what do? You hire a guard and you hire a guide and a guard and you start going into the bush, into the deep, dark townships, into the areas where off the beaten track, where people do not go. And you go from township to township, and you see loincloths coming out with hunting, and you see all the things that you only ever see in like National Geographic. And eventually what happens, you rock up to a village, and you see a huge clearing in the middle of the village. And you look and you see there's a huge gathering of people in that in the clearing. So you get very excited. Maybe I'm going to see a rite of passage. Maybe I'm going to see a something that no one's really ever seen before. Maybe I'm going to see something which is going to change my life. So you push your way to the front, and what do you see in the middle? A brand new Ferrari. So you're like, there's not a road for miles away from here. Like, what on earth is a Ferrari doing here? Sorry? Top Gear, yes. Or the Grand Tour now, yeah. Great. So you see a brand new Ferrari. And you look a bit closer and you see there's a guy inside the Ferrari. And he pushes a button and the lights come on. And everyone goes mental. They think he's doing magic. They're laughing and dancing and singing. He pushes another button and the radio comes on. And they've never heard music before, so they're going crazy. They're bowing down to this guy. They think he's a god. What do you think? Oy Nebuch. If only they knew what they had in front of them. They've got a car. Let alone what a car. They've got the Ferrari. I use this to explain that this is how people without Torah are living nowadays. That very often we have people saying, wow, I can flash my lights. I can turn on my radio. I can do what I want. But very often, they're not really getting the most out of what they've got in front of them. Obviously, in the mashal, the human is the car. Right? The human is we are. We have all these capabilities. But if the wrong person drives it, if the guy doesn't drive it, if only in the story they could open up the glove compartment and they'll read the manual, they'll realize what they have in front of them. Humanity has a manual. And when you read it, you'll realize how to get the maximum out of humanity. How to get the maximum out of the body that we've been given. So once again, there's an infinite God. It can't be that he created the world for his benefit. Not only that, but what? It must be, therefore, our benefit. And then he gave us a book about how to do it. He gave us the cheat code. Does it make sense logically that he's not going to give us the best way to get pleasure from this world? Does it make sense that the ultimate mative isn't going to give the best way to be mative? He's clearly going to give us the best way for us to experience pleasure. Not only that, but we see in Perush and Mishnayos in the Rambam that what? That you can, if you look at something, what does he say? He says that you can tell something by the function of that thing. If you look at something and an alien comes down from wherever, space, I guess, and he's trying to work out what humanity is. And he goes to Las Vegas, and he goes to Ponovich, and he goes to, I don't know, Manhattan. He goes everywhere. Goes to Borough Park. Right? What's the commonality between what every single person is doing? We're all seeking pleasure in our own way. So we have these pleasure-seeking beings that were created by a God that wants to be mated. He gave us a book about how to do it. Logically, it makes sense that that's the best way for us to experience life in the best way. For us to experience life in the most pleasurable way. I think that's point one. Point two is, we're going to go through this quite quickly just because of the brevity, because of time. Point two is that becoming frum means that you become a robot. Everything's written down from you from the moment you wake up, what you're meant to do, to the moment we go to sleep, and even the stuff we don't know. You ask a guy with a bigger beard. You ask a guy with a bigger hat. Right? So we're not thinking. So I personally think this is like anyone that spent half an hour in yeshiva can't think this. You open up any book in yeshiva, what do they say? Arguments. Machloksim. Even not only in the Gemara, but also in the Rishonim, also even contemporary poskim. You see that people have opinions. You see that people argue. You know, they say, Karl Marx once said that religion is the opiate of the masses. It means they don't have to think. They just go along with it. Right? And then don't worry, you'll get Olam Haba, you'll get life in the next world. Just follow whatever the dude said. But you see, even in the secular world, the Jews are called, what are the Jews called? The people of the book. Right? You see that there's an intellectual element to Judaism that there is no other. And you see that out of all the religions, even secular people say that Judaism is an intellectual pursuit. You see that even the secular people that have ditched the religion still are into academics. They may be into different academics, but they're still into the academics. Where did that come from? To go deeper. I think there's a way to go deeper. Right? We know that one of the first mitzvahs, the first of the Seres Dibros is later. You have an obligation to use your brain to work out, does it make sense that Torah exists or not? To know if is there a God. It's a mitzvah. Take it even further. That we know that what? Oh, that wasn't meant to happen. That we know that there's this concept that every person has to say Bishvili Nivra Olam. What does that mean, Bishvili Nivra Olam? The world was created for me. But there's a flip side to that. What's the flip side to that? It means that everything that goes wrong is also my problem. If that doesn't get you thinking, what will? Everything that goes wrong in this world is somewhat, if I can change it, I have an obligation to do what I can. That's an intellectual challenge to think. How can I change the world for the better? How can I change these current problems? How do I change myself in the best way to solve the issues? Judaism in every aspect is an intellectual challenge to grow as a person, to grow your society, to grow the Jewish people. The reason we're here now is because we're trying to learn about how to help our brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles. Yeah? Okay, fine. I think that's point 2. Point 3, which I think is the funniest one, and I think it's funny because I didn't grow up from, which is that from people think they're better than us, but then secular people. And the reason I think it's funny is because I think deep down it comes from an insecurity. That very often we project what's really going on inside the secular people really project, or everyone does. Everyone, when you think something and you feel something about someone, you project what they're thinking, what you're thinking on them. Right, we know that there's studies that say, no problem. We know there are studies that say when you make a judgment about someone, you don't do it in the first minute, you don't do it in the first 30 seconds, you do it within milliseconds. You make a snap judgment, and that's why we have this expression that what? First impressions, you never get the opportunity to make a second first impression. Something like that. English isn't my strong suit. Right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression. There you go. Bit slow. We know that if I feel I'm being judged, I'm going to feel judged. I know that if I feel that I'm in danger, I'm going to be scared. Right? We know we can control our emotions in Judaism. The mitzvah to love God. Right? Mitzvah to love other people. Judaism is clear that we can control our emotions.
When you're talking to someone from the outside, you say this message straight.
What? Which
The
Nakuda?
fact that the reason why you think that we think we're better than you is because you're projecting your feelings on us.
I think, yeah.
You could say it
I would say yes, but I would say obviously say it slightly less sharp. But yeah, I would say something like come, like let's meet them. Let's see if it's true. And then later, once you've met 1 or 2, 3 people, then I would say, okay, so where's this coming from? But I wouldn't say it as in, and therefore there's a problem within you. I'd say, hey, this is a way to learn about human psychology and how we act. That very often, when I'm scared, I'm not really scared, right? We know there's a famous line which I heard from one of my rabbis, which I think is one of the best lines I've ever heard, which is that we don't experience experiences, we experience the way that we experience experiences. You ever heard this line? It blew my mind when I first heard it, right? We don't experience experiences. We experience the way we experience experiences. What's the example? Right? You're sleeping at night upstairs, and you hear a bang downstairs. And you wake up and you're like, whoa, I think there's someone in my house. And you get freaked out, and you pick up the baseball bat, and you're walking down the stairs, and you're freaking out as if there's a robber. And then you find out, I don't know, the painting fell down, or a door slammed shut. Right? Nothing happened. Why'd you get so worked up? You're experiencing the reality that you created for yourself. You experience the experience, but not the reality. So we don't experience experiences. We don't experience the true experience. We don't really experience what's going on. We don't live reality. Rather, we experience the way that we experience experiences. We choose to act, to make a snap decision about this is what's going on, and as a result, we react to that. So if you say it in a more general concept like that, then that's a growth experience, 100%. And within that, obviously, there's going to be like, hey, you think these people don't like you, even though they do. And obviously, there's weirdos and extremists in every society, and some people just aren't mean, or some people are just mean. But there's a rule, which is that what? Even let's say that they live in the meanest place with a bunch of frum people, and all the frum people are really mean, which I can't imagine that's true. Right? We have a rule, which is that you can't judge Judaism by what Jews do. See what the Torah says. Okay, so everyone's screwing up on this one issue in the place you live. But does God say, be mean? No, he says, right? He says you can't judge someone until you've walked in their shoes. He says, Dan es kolah, dan l'chav schus. He says we don't know whose blood's redder. Right? The biggest rabbi in the world versus the most secular guy ever. Right? We don't know whose blood's redder. We can't give someone's life up. That's what Judaism says. So great. Let's say, bon agid, let's say that you're right. They live in the meanest building with the meanest people. Okay, so they're not doing halacha. So now you don't be that guy. I wouldn't want to be that type of frum either. I'd like to be from like the halacha says. I'd like to be from like God expects me to keep Torah mitzvahs. And that mean guy, or whatever the experience that he once had, which some guy like looked at him funny, okay, that's not Judaism. That's okay. So the last one I would say. Sorry, just one more point to add to that. That you see an interesting point by Rav Dessler about his Nekudas HaBechira that also we can add to this. Which is he talks about this Ganav. The Ganav that normally goes around killing people. And one day he decides, you know what? I'm just going to beat them up. I'm not going to kill them. In terms of growth, that guy's a tzaddik. That guy's gone up so many rungs. Right? But the guy that turns up to Seder every day and hasn't really got so much nisyonis of turning up just because that's what he does and he's Baruch Hashem, he's in yeshiva. That guy's not growing so much. When you explain this concept to the secular people, their minds are blown. Obviously, we're having a bit of a guzma for dramatic effect, but people's minds are blown. There's a clear difference between where you need to be for the frum guy and the guy that was brought up not frum. For the guy that was brought up in a drug addict household and the guy that was brought up in Bnei Brak, in a non-drug addict household. Right? People are mind blown by that, and that really shifts people's understanding. Okay, let's just to the fourth one, and this is the one that people seem to have a controversy with. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Depends how. I know it's late on Motzi Shabbos, so I don't think anyone's really even listening. I'm having fun. So anyway, the last one is Judaism is not all or nothing. Do people agree with that? Yes or no? Who says yes? Judaism is not all or nothing. Who says Judaism is all or nothing? Who's asleep? Who wants the air conditioning turned on?
What does all or nothing mean?
What? Sorry?
Are you translating all or nothing? Like, what does it mean?
I'm not, it's English.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you mean like all or nothing? Like, if we do Averis throughout the day, that means that we are inherently not bad people?
A secular guy comes to you and says, nah, I can't be bothered to be religious because I have to change all my life. I can't do it all 613, that's too much for me. I'm still going out, I'm still dating this non-Jewish woman, I'm still not keeping Shabbat, I'm not keeping kosher. You expect me to do all of that overnight? What do you say to him?
No.
You're right. What do you mean no? God expects him to keep Shabbos, right? God expects him to...
No, yeah, God expects him right now to keep Shabbos.
That's what the Torah says.
Well,
I'm asking you. I know. So therefore, what do you say?
Every person has their own challenges of where they come from in life.
So what's your name, sir?
You have to
What's your name?
love it.
So David gives a header. He never has to keep Shabbos.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving a header based on what I've been told by rabbis.
But what's that based off of? What's that based off? So what's that based off of?
It's based off the fact that you need slow growth in order to be able to keep it. And
Okay.
In order to be able
In other words, break Shabbos this week so you can keep it next week. No, there is some sort of svaras like that. I'm really not mocking you. I'm Tinok Shinishba, okay. So therefore, don't educate, right? Because the more you educate, the less of a Tinok Shinishba there.
So you have to weigh out how much you can do and how much time you have.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but okay, so now, like, how long do I have to think? I have to think. As in, how long do I give him until I need to make him Shomer Shabbos?
He needs.
What does that mean?
How much are you able to
To pay.
Person is their own person. You have to judge every person's heart.
Okay, anyone else have any go, sir?
If you tell them to do everything in one shot, you're just gonna drop everything. So you have to do your best to just keep whatever you can do with it, and then slowly do more.
Yeah.
They want a Jewish person, they want a non-Jewish person becoming Jewish.
Frum person. Sorry, secular person becoming frum.
No, talk about a non-Jew becoming Jewish. You can't tell them to do this.
Oh, that's true, right? Oh, you hear that? A Gerrit has to be Makabel called Torah Gula. Very nice. Interesting. Yeah?
I think the way that Rob Desser, like I think you mentioned Rob Desser, the fear of, the include of the fear, I think is a good way to describe it because he said like Hashem's not necessarily judging you for things that, like that's a battle that you're going to face in the future.
Unbelievable. There's things that are above you in the Kiddush
Like right now, just focus on what you can do.
Okay. The best way that I would describe it is a little bit attacking you guys. And it's attacking me as well, and it's an attacking Rabbi Rosen. It's attacking everyone. Put your hand up right now if you've got a clear plan to know cold all Torah, all halacha, and put it into practice. Eventually, what does that mean? Okay. So the vast majority of people that I ask this to don't have this plan. And the point that I'm trying to give is a secular person. They accept all of Torah as true. That's it. Yeah, it makes sense to me, Rabbi. God, there's a God. If you go hear National Revelation, yeah, it makes sense to me. But it's really hard, and I can't do it. Implement it into my life. So the frum guy, what does the frum guy in yeshiva say? Oh, I believe in God. I believe in Torah. I basically keep Shabbos, even though the Chofetz Chaim says you don't, right? Unless you've really learned it, right? I do my best. I'm going to work on my next step. I'm going to work on Kavanah today. I'm going to work on this tomorrow. Why is your goal not to all? Why is your goal not to have Kavanah and be like Reb Chaim every day? Because it's unrealistic. In other words, the frum guy is no different to the secular guy. Once you both believe Torah is true and you're working on the next stage, then what's the difference? You're both on the ladder. You both understand that Torah is true. You're both getting closer to the all. So what's the difference between you and him? You're just higher up the ladder. Anyone agree with that? Anyone disagree with that? Anyone abuse? What? But 3 lefts make it right. Sorry.
Because you're doing something that's not correct, doesn't mean he's allowed to do it.
But okay, and therefore, what would you suggest?
So it is all or nothing. You're trying to say that because we don't do all or nothing, everyone doesn't do all or nothing.
So you think everyone's over everything? So what are you? Right now, why do you every day that you don't daven like Reb Chaim, or you don't learn as stark as him, or you mevatel Torah? Why is that okay?
It's not wrong. It's not right.
Why is it not wrong?
It's not wrong.
Why is it not wrong?
You don't have to.
Why don't you have to?
You know how others live, the breaks are the same thing as the learning. Breaks of learning are the same.
If you don't have that's a good ass, you say.
No, the habits of learning are equivalent to learning.
I don't know.
You need it. I'm saying.
If you need it, right? Okay.
Doesn't make it right not to do all or nothing.
Okay. I hear that. But you see, the mahalach of the frum Welt is to do this. Is to be constantly working on improving yourself and trying to get to all. That's the point. Right? In other words, you're right, you can't do it all right now, but what you could do is the next step. You could learn Sharim B'Tefillah. You could learn Hilchos Davening. Right? That's what you could do, because that's what's within our grasp. I told you, this always is the problematic one. Yeah, go on.
In other words, the goal is all, but
For sure the goal is all. But the problem with the goal is all is the goal for most from people is not all.
it's not or nothing.
In Achanami. Yeah.
There's certain things that we view more crucial in Judaism to get to that point than other milestones.
Like what?
For example, keeping Shabbos we view as a...
You talking about us or him?
What?
You took-
As a from person.
Uh-huh.
I'm saying you're correct. It's the same...
Yeah, sure. Okay.
The same both mentalities, but there's certain points where we would agree that for the non-from person to reach those milestones is more important than for the from person
Sure.
to get higher.
100%. But where's the cutoff point?
What?
Where's the cutoff point?
They say the big 3. Saying
Okay.
Shabbos,
I don't think most.
Shabbos,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think most people are down to 2. I'm not sure the murder is such a problem nowadays, but I think. I said, whatever. I was just making a joke. I'm sorry. Yeah. English humor. So, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, anyone agree, disagree?
What's the answer if someone told you at the end of the day, like right now, so if I do something, am I gonna like go to hell if I don't keep this Shabbos?
No.
Right now.
So if you hold Timothy, but that's not true.
Yeah, so you answer.
I'd say there's a concept of someone that is trying their hardest, trying to connect. You believe that is true, and you're doing everything but kol koicho to try and get to that next step. Then you're doing exactly what Hashem wants from you. Right?
So you're telling me that according to Hashem right now, you're not getting punished for it.
I didn't say that. I said you're doing everything that Hashem wants from you right now.
Right.
I don't know if that's true. I'm not Hashem. Right? You say I don't know. You say I don't know, but I know this for sure. That you're doing everything Hashem wants from you right now, and that's more than I'm doing. Right? Think about all of the chiyuvim on every from person at every moment. Right? How many of the 6 concept mitzvahs are you constantly fulfilling? You know. This guy just needs to not speak lashon hara and not sleep around. You know. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I feel like the concept of an all or nothing doesn't really exist because even if you look at Ruchaim, you can't really say that he doesn't have any more room to grow. I'm sure there are things that he's still.
For sure, that's what I mean. But I meant that as what we would consider that's already far beyond my grasp. I think. I don't know.
The answer is just that, like you said, everyone's just kind of on a ladder.
100%, right? 100%. Right, I was building off what you said before. 100%. 100%. And I think this is also true by Kiruv Korobim also, by the way. That there's an inbuilt guilt of people lying to themselves where they're really holding in the frum world because of the family they come from, because of the hashkafas that they were brought up. They're really lying to themselves and they're saying, I am this frum because this is what my community is and this is who I am. And they're really not. They're really down here. And when they really come down to where they're really holding, they feel guilty that they're not where everyone else around them is. And therefore, once they understand this concept that it's all about accepting that it's true and doing the next step, then that guilt goes away, or at least it dramatically decreases. So I think that's a point that isn't stressed enough. So anyway, let's just finish off, just to summarize. John. We've spoken about 4 misconceptions today. The first one is Judaism is not fun. We said that if Hashem created us who purely for our benefit and we are pleasure seekers and he gave us a book about how to achieve the most pleasure, that must be... Go on. I'll ask questions after. Is that okay? That will be the best way to achieve pleasure in this world. Second one is we're not intellectuals. Come to yeshiva, you realize that's not true, basically. No, you see that Judaism is constantly challenging everyone in the religion, everyone that's listening, to intellectually view the world as much as possible and to fix the world through changing yourself and the people around you. Number 3 is that from people think that they are better, right? If they're true, then okay, that's something they need to work on. If it's not true, then we see that in halacha, we see that you can't judge people. You see that people that grow dramatically, even though they're not wearing black hats, could grow much more than the person that's sitting in yeshiva all day. And the third thing is, you can't judge people until you've really understood their matzah, until you've been in their shoes. The last thing is, Judaism is not all or nothing. We said that just really understand what? Just really understand that once they've accepted Torah is true and they're working as much as they can to connect, as much as they can to grow, then they're basically in the same boat as us. And as a result, Judaism is not all or nothing in as much as that you're putting in all of your effort to achieve as much as you can. Okay, question. Sorry, he was first.
Your answer to the fact that Judaism is fun is the pre-assumption that the reason Hashem put us in this world is, like Mesilas Sharm says, it's pleasure. But
and my assumption for Judaism is not all or nothing is you accept that Torah is true. In other words, we have to be talking about someone that's somewhat through the process. 100%. Because otherwise you turn into competing with bars and offering alcohol, and then you're no better off than what they would be doing. Because you're saying, yeah, we're fun, you can drink here. And that's cheapening Judaism.
So, you brought up something that you actually, I don't know if you addressed it, maybe it went over my head, but nowadays, especially now, there's a lot of misconceptions on sexism.
Someone else asked it. I didn't address that. That's for part 2.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Anyone else? Amazing. Thank you very much. You've all been amazing listening.
Hey, guys, we'll take a 2-minute break, and we're going to go right into the next class on